ever wonder why it seems everybody is so broke these days? I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years, and the reality is there's a number of things that have changed that make it harder to get ahead these days. And I'm going to begin the video with those. But there's also some fundamental truths that have remained unchanged in what it takes to get ahead. And I'm going to close the video with those items. So the first one I want to talk about is the price of housing. When I began my professional career in the mid-1980s, if you looked at the median household in the United States, they were making about $25,000, and the median household price was about $100,000. So for that family, if they saved 4 years, 100% of their income, which obviously they could not do, but this will give us a reference. 4 years of their hard-earned money, they could buy a home. And you know, that stayed pretty constant until 2019. In 2019, the average U.S. household, the median, sold for $313,000, and the median household income was $68,700. So that means instead of 4 years, it was a little over 4.5 years that they would have to work. So it had increased, but not a crazy amount. And just since 2019 to 2022, the average family would need to work almost 6 years to afford that same median house. Now, it's true that the median house size has increased as well, but it's become harder to begin saving that money and having real estate. And really, real estate is one of the four legs. Our residential, our homes, is one of the four legs that we use to start building up our net worth and eventually prepare to retire. So that's a big item. The second one is the availability of debt has become widespread and super easy. When I was in undergrad, there was no way I could get a credit card. Credit cards were common, but not crazy common. And now they're super common, and one of the credit card company's favorite target audiences is college students because they haven't racked up any debt yet. So the availability of credit is easier and it's more pervasive. At least here in the United States, we buy almost everything on our credit cards. And as long as you pay it off every month, that's not a problem. But credit has gotten very easy. And I think the two easiest places to get credit is a credit card, which is going to charge high interest. And the other thing is a car loan. Unfortunately, the average car loan is almost $750 a month now. And about 20% of all new car loans are for over $1,000 a month. And used cars aren't much better. They are better, but not much better. The average used car loan is a little over $500 a month. So between credit cards and car loans, lots of people get caught in this debt cycle, and it's hard to get out of that. So that's the second one. The third one is inflation and shrinkflation. We've all experienced this over the last 15 years until the last 5 years. The 10 years prior to that, very low inflation. We really didn't have to worry about it. But now prices have increased significantly. Yes, inflation has come down from almost 10% down to the mid threes, let's call it. But that last mile of inflation takes a long time to beat. And so unfortunately what that means is the Federal Reserve's likely going to keep interest rates high, which makes that debt more expensive that we talked about earlier. And prices are likely not going to be coming down anytime soon. And in fact, the way inflation works is just because inflation goes from 3.5%, maybe we get it down to 2% again, that doesn't mean that prices go down. It means that the price increase is just slow. So my box of Raisin Bran that I like to talk about on this channel cost me $3 a box before the pandemic. It's now $6 a box. You know what? My $3 box of Raisin Bran is never coming back. Okay, the fourth one. You know, the reality is the disparity between jobs, the pay disparity between jobs, has never been larger than it is right now. There's fewer high-paying jobs, and the vast majority of jobs are jobs that it's going to be hard to get raises in, and there's a plethora of jobs at or near minimum wage. Let's call it within 2 times minimum wage. There's a ton of those jobs, and it's hard to break out of that cycle. So unless you can skill up and get additional skills, additional specializations, it's going to be hard to climb out of it, because those high-paying jobs are fewer and further between. And even in the technology sector, in this slowdown, in this economic slowdown, we've seen a lot of those high-paying tech jobs, there'd be layoffs. So there's people with 10, 15 years of experience that are having difficulty finding jobs. So that disparity is making harder to get ahead, and it's why so many people appear broke. Okay, number 5, the reality is it's more expensive to live if you have less money, if you don't have an emergency fund. What are you going to do if you have an unexpected car expense, car repair, or you have a medical bill, you break an arm and it costs $1,000? The reality is over half of all Americans say that they could not pay cash for an unexpected $1,000 expense. So if you don't have an emergency fund, which should be 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, it's more expensive to live because you have fewer alternatives. It's why payday loan companies exist. It's why pawn shops exist. It's for these crunch modes. And that's why, as you're saving money, I don't know your situation. This isn't financial advice, but one of the first places you should put your money is in an emergency fund so you can weather a storm like that, particularly if you were to lose your job. I want you to be able to wait for the right job for you that's going to have a long-term impact on your career versus taking the first job that comes along because you need the money. Okay, that's number 5. Number 6 is the rise of subscription services. You know, a decade ago, many of us bought software, and that software came with a one-time cost. And now that's very unusual. There's all these services, whether it's how we listen to music. You know, we don't buy CDs, we don't buy vinyl records anymore. We sign up for a service. Whether it's movies, you know, we don't rent a movie one time from the video store down the street. We stream, and many of us have 3, 4, 5 subscription services just for streaming television. So the proliferation of all these streaming services add up over time. And you know, these services are designed to be super easy to start, right? They give you a free trial, and many of us think, well, I want to watch this movie, I want to watch this TV series, and I'll binge watch it over the weekend, and then I'll cancel, and then we forget to cancel. And many of these services are difficult to cancel. We do what we need to do to cancel, and they make it difficult. The classic example of that, of course, there's lots of videos on the internet that show people trying to cancel their cable television at home, and how hard cable television, cable internet providers fight to keep your business when you're trying to cancel it. Okay, now for some fundamental truths that haven't changed. Okay, we've got 3 of those. And the first one is, you know, we all have high pressure jobs. And when you have a high pressure job, right, and the American culture is we're trying to do things better, faster, and cheaper, which is great when we're on the consumer side of it. But when we're on the employee side of it, what that means is we're all working harder. You know, we're working, let's see, better, faster, cheaper. So we're working smarter, we're faster, we're working quicker, and cheaper. We're getting less when you factor in inflation. So we're on the opposite side of that equation, and that's stressful. And oftentimes we want to unwind, we want to go out with our friends after work, and that can be expensive, and it's getting more expensive, whether that's going out for a drink or 2, or it's going out to eat, or, you know, even just hanging out for a cup of coffee. Now, I will tell you, there's a lot of financial advisors that'll say, oh, your cup of Starbucks is costing you $4 or $5 a day. I can tell you there is nobody that cannot retire because they bought too many cups of Starbucks coffee. So if you're going to Starbucks to unwind, you're having a decaf after work, you're connecting with a friend, I think that's money well spent. I want to encourage you to do that. If you want to save a couple dollars, invite them over your house and make your own decaf at home, or share a drink with them at home. But so that's a fundamental truth. The other fundamental truth is our culture, it's not fun to save. And I think we need to change that, where it is fun to save. And what I do personally, and what I encourage my clients to do, is really think of yourself as current you and future you. And the trade-off isn't, well, I'm not buying this now. It's, I'm making this sacrifice today. I'm choosing to give this money to my future self. Because one of the best gifts we can give ourselves is the gift of freedom, the gift to not have to work for money. It doesn't mean you're going to retire. I do think that most Americans would benefit from being thoughtful and deliberate about retiring sooner. But just having that gift of freedom to know that you're working because you enjoy your work as opposed to you have to work. And the other fundamental truth that I think really hurts a lot of us is this keeping up with the Joneses, this need to compare. It's not just who we are and what we want, but it's, we're happy, and then our neighbor maybe buys a boat, and then all of a sudden we want to buy a boat. Or they buy an expensive car, and then we want to buy an expensive car. Or where it really can get dangerous is comparing yourself to your parents that have 30 years more, 30 or 40 years of more time working and saving and sacrificing. And then saying, well, I don't have as much as my parents. I don't live in as nice of a home as my parents. You know what? Probably by the time you get to be their age, you'll live in a nicer home and you'll have plenty of toys in comparison. But it's this, our culture here in the United States tends to fall victim to comparing ourselves to others. And that can be one of the biggest destroyers of wealth in your life, because wealth is not the toys that we own. Wealth is the money that we don't spend. I was talking earlier about freedom and being able to retire as soon as you can. And I think that's the biggest gift that we can give ourselves. Early retirement's not for everybody, but I think being thoughtful and deliberate about when you retire is something that you want to think about. And that's why I made this video up here, why retiring at 65 is a big mistake. I know you'll like it. It's one of my most popular videos. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.